in Mago Reddit. Today's story is...
My wife was acting strangely at 3 a.m. What I discovered on her phone exposed an unforgivable betrayal with the last person I imagined. About half a year ago, I started to notice strange behavior in my wife. This discovery ended up destroying my marriage and ruining my existence, and it is also going to cause great pain and depression in my mom, so I am totally lost as to what to do. Until recently, I enjoyed a wonderful life. It was so satisfying that I often took pride in it. From personal experience, I have learned that boasting about having a perfect existence is not a good idea. It's like tempting fate. I'm not so gullible as to think that I put a curse on myself by mentioning it, but it didn't help either. I think it made the situation worse, because I really thought that nothing negative could happen to me, and now everything is collapsing simultaneously. Well, let's get to the main point. I had an excellent job and was married to a woman named Carol. We had been married for over 2 years, and as I mentioned before, I was completely satisfied with her. We lived near my mom and her husband, Lucas. They both loved and cared for me, or so I thought. My mom married Lucas when I was 10. He has been part of my life for a very long time. My biological father abandoned us in very complicated circumstances. Mom worked very hard to support us, and after a few years, she fell in love with Lucas, who gladly agreed to take care of both of us. Until now, I had never thought of Lucas as just my stepfather. To me, he was my father and hero, someone who gave me love and protection. Although we did not share blood or similar physical features, he never made me feel that I was not his son. From the moment he married my mom, or even before, he acted like a real father. I know this may seem like superfluous information, but it is not. I want you to understand how much it hurts me to discover that he didn't really care about me or my mom. Now, let's go back 6 months. That was when I started to realize that something was wrong. At first, I couldn't identify what it was, but I noticed Carol's behavior was strange and different. I thought I was just being paranoid, but as the days went by, it became clear that something was going on with her. I can't explain exactly what had changed, but I felt it. Call it intuition. I sensed that she was hiding information from me, so I asked her directly if something was wrong. Carol explained to me that she was overworked, and that was all she cared about. Unlike me, my wife doesn't enjoy her work very much, but she refuses to give it up. Therefore, it made sense that she was going through one of those difficult periods, as she occasionally faced problems with her work situation. Struggling at a job you hate is one of the worst life experiences. I've been there. I want to make something clear. I would never force her to work. I could support us both until she found something she liked, but she always refused my offer, so I respected her decision. After that, as strange as I perceived everything, I always attributed it to work stress. My wife didn't seem overly affected, but I decided not to pressure her on the subject. I knew that if she needed my help or advice, she would let me know. Several months later, I began to notice strange behavior from my stepfather Lucas towards me. With him, it was much more obvious, so much so that I even asked him directly what was going on. He just said he was nervous about something. But in every conversation, I felt like he was hiding information from me. No matter how much I pressed him, he kept saying that nothing was wrong. I became so worried about him that I even mentioned it to my mother. She confirmed that she had also noticed his unusual behavior. All these were signs to stop my investigation, and I wish I had. Now that I know the whole truth, I can't just keep quiet. A few days ago, I woke up startled by a nightmare and noticed that my wife was not in bed. It was about 3 in the morning, with no apparent reason for her to be awake at that hour. Then I heard her talking to someone on the balcony. I found it very suspicious to receive a call at that time of night. My wife loves to sleep, sometimes even more than I do, so there was no logical explanation for her being on the phone unless something really serious had happened. I tried to approach silently without her detecting me. I managed to hear only a fragment of the conversation. She said something like, "If that happens, we'll both be in trouble, and you definitely won't come out of this well." Something like that. It sounded very suspicious, at least to me. But then she discovered me and hung up immediately. When I asked her, she explained that she was talking to her sister because her mother was ill. Initially, I suspected that she was involved in something illegal. The next day, I decided to investigate further. When Carol went to shower, I took her phone. I knew her code, but I needed deeper access. Fortunately, in my job, I have learned some technological techniques. Believe me when I say that nothing on your phone is truly protected, regardless of the brand or operating system. I'm sorry to say it, but it's the reality. I examined everything, hoping to discover what problem he had gotten himself into, but my finding was completely unexpected. I discovered that my wife was cheating on me, but the worst part was not just the infidelity, but that she was doing it with my stepfather. Lucas was indeed having an affair with my wife. I don't know what hurt me more, the simultaneous betrayal of the two people I trusted the most, or the brutality of the truth itself. I quickly gathered all the evidence I could and left the phone exactly as I found it. I was so shocked that I didn't even look too closely, but I really didn't need any more proof. I found enough messages, photos, and videos that unequivocally proved his affair. I didn't want to see the videos, and I still refused to. I just kept them in case I ever needed them as evidence. I couldn't and still can't believe they did this to me and my mother. Since then, I have hardly spoken to Carol or Lucas because I am afraid of exploding with rage. Fortunately, Carol has been very busy with her work, which has made it easier to avoid her. I don't even have the courage to talk to my mother. I am terrified of how much she will suffer when she finds out. She loves Carol like a daughter and loves Lucas as much as me. It's time to tell her, but I don't want to be the one to break her heart. However, my mother deserves to know. I'm just looking for the right way to communicate such devastating news, because saying to her directly, "Mom, our partners are cheating on us," doesn't seem like the most appropriate approach right now. I don't think there is an ideal way, but I'm trying to find something less painful. Update 1. A week ago, I published here my discovery about the relationship between my wife and my stepfather. I haven't confronted them yet, but I have developed a plan to expose them in front of everyone. A private confrontation is not what they deserve, considering that they have acted in secret from all of us. I am convinced that there is no possible justification for their actions. There is no universe in which this makes sense. Honestly, at this point, I couldn't care less about the reason for their betrayal. Besides, I don't want to allow them to make excuses. I want everyone to see their true nature, without mitigating circumstances or excuses. After reflecting, I realized that asking for explanations wouldn't change anything. They deliberately stabbed me in the back. For the 3 days after my discovery, all I could think about was how to inform my mother. I knew it would devastate her, but it was necessary to do so, and thanks to her advice, I found the least harmful method, so to speak. I don't think there is an ideal way, just some less painful than others. I decided to meet with her in private, away from home. I asked to meet alone without informing Lucas. As I had never asked for something like this before, she was considerably worried. When we met, she immediately asked if everything was all right. I spent 3 days preparing my speech, but when I saw her, I was paralyzed. I had planned every word, but her presence made the task enormously difficult. She asked again what was wrong. I told her that Lucas had been unfaithful to her. At first, she didn't believe it, but I added that there was something worse that made it 100 times worse. She looked at me confused and asked what could be worse. She even asked if he had any interest in minors or similar situations, which I denied. I suppose there could be more terrible revelations. But it wasn't easy to tell her that her husband's mistress was Carol. She didn't believe a word. At first, she doubted the infidelity, but Carol's involvement seemed impossible to her. She thought I was lying, and honestly, I didn't want to show her the evidence because she had only seen it once, and it had been extremely painful. I didn't want to look at it again or have her see it. I suggested that it would be better to avoid them, but I also knew that she would never believe me without evidence. So, reluctantly, I showed her everything. When she saw it, she broke down emotionally and cried for more than an hour before partially calming down. Afterwards, we discussed our next steps. He agreed on the need to confront them, but he refused to return home that night. He made up an excuse and stayed with a friend. Since then, he has remained there, and we have drawn up a plan. We have organized a family meeting in a week's time, inviting almost all the relatives. We plan to expose them in front of the whole family. Mom approved of this strategy, considering it the best option. For now, he continues with his friend. The family meeting will take place in about a week, and soon all the close relatives will know exactly what happened. The next update will be crucial, because once this situation is revealed, it will be unstoppable. Update 2. I will report what happened at the family gathering immediately. In recent days, I worked hard to organize everything without arousing suspicion in Lucas or Carol. And it worked. My mother was the only one who knew the truth, so keeping the secret was difficult. I couldn't wait for the day of the family reunion to arrive. I noticed that everyone was speculating about its purpose. Some assumed it was an engagement announcement, others a pregnancy, and some eccentric relatives formulated their own theories. Having invited almost the whole family, it became a significant event. When most of the guests arrived, I asked for their attention and revealed the real reason for our presence. My mother remained by my side as I looked directly at Carol and confessed to everyone our discovery about her infidelity. Carol was surprised and prepared her defense against the accusation. Then my mother intervened, revealing that Lucas had also been unfaithful to her. And not coincidentally, they had both been unfaithful simultaneously, but to each other. Carol denied cheating on me with Lucas, so I replied, "So you don't cheat on me with him, but at least you admit your infidelity." Before anyone could defend her or question my words, I presented the evidence. Everyone was silent, only my mother's sobs could be heard. Lucas tried to approach her to talk to her, but I stood in his way. He repeatedly tried to get closer, but I blocked him every time. My mother was crying so hard that she couldn't even speak. My father-in-law, Carol's father, approached us, expressing shame at his daughter's actions. He even apologized to me. I assured him that he was not responsible for what had happened. He and his family were speechless. My mother tried to physically assault Carol, but I restrained her. I explained that physically hurting her wouldn't make anything better, but Lucas refused to leave even after all this. So you know what we did? We had to forcefully expel him, piece by piece. The next day, my mother threw all of Lucas's belongings out onto the street. As she owned the house, there was no reason for him to stay. I did the same with Carol. We are both currently going through divorces. I feel deeply saddened. I still find it hard to accept this reality because I wake up thinking it is too absurd to be my life. But when my brain starts working, I confront the reality of my current situation. From there, the day only gets worse. Update 3. After my last update, my mother and I simply tried to move on while processing our divorces. The process was quite simple. Despite Lucas's persistent attempts to communicate, we refused to listen to him. He tried tirelessly, even showing up in front of my house several times, but I always rejected him. He pleaded repeatedly, but eventually gave up. Carol, for her part, hardly spoke. She simply apologized and disappeared. Almost everyone cut off relations with Carol and Lucas. Nobody wanted to keep in touch with them. However, Carol managed to reconcile with her family. According to rumors, she explained to them that Lucas manipulated her, used her, and forced her to participate. Her family forgave her, and a friend even offered her a job in his company. At that moment, I no longer cared about anything to do with her. I didn't even think about her or her activities. For me, they both shared the guilt, regardless of their statements. But it turned out that I was completely wrong. You see, I have a close friend named James, whom I hadn't seen recently. He unexpectedly called me asking to meet. When a friend asks to see you, you just do it, even if you don't know the reason. When we met, he asked how I was. I told him I was fine, although going through a difficult time after the divorce. He then told me that he had seen Lucas and had some important information to share. Apparently, Lucas had bumped into him, and he had told him what he was trying to tell my mother and me. Lucas knew I wouldn't listen to him directly, so he asked James to pass on his message. Basically, Lucas claimed to have been the victim of blackmail. According to him, Carol manipulated him from the start. Somehow, she obtained a photograph of him helping her ex in a situation where he was not wearing a shirt. Apparently, he was doing plumbing work and his shirt got wet. With these images, she threatened to tell my mother that he was being unfaithful. When he refused her demands, Carol stepped up the pressure, warning him that as well as ruining his marriage, she would abandon me and destroy my life. According to Lucas, Carol only wanted intimacy with him once and then to leave him alone. In desperation, he agreed, making his biggest mistake. Carol got her way, took more photographs, and began to blackmail him even more. Every day his demands increased, forcing him to obey or risk destruction. Suddenly, I exposed them in front of everyone, and they were both exposed. Since then, Lucas has only tried to prove that he never willingly betrayed us, that he would never have acted like that without coercion. He sent multiple messages to James claiming to have evidence of what happened. James believed him. After talking to James, I reported directly to my mother, but she did not accept his version. She believes that Lucas is simply trying to get close to us again to manipulate us, and that it is best to forget the past. She asked me not to think about it anymore, and to just let it go. However, on deeper reflection, I believe that even if Lucas was telling the truth, his action is still reprehensible. He could have refused and confronted Carol's photographs, but he chose infidelity. It doesn't matter that he was coerced. Update 4. After considerable reflection, I decided that talking to Lucas was appropriate, not because his story seemed coherent or reparative, but because he had plans for Carol. So I asked James to pass on my message, agreeing to meet with him. We met, and his first action was to apologize for everything. I made it clear that I wasn't looking for apologies, but to hear his side of the story. I explained that my presence was solely due to James. Lucas then told me everything that James had previously communicated, but with additional details. He showed me messages he had saved from Carol, her threats and coercion. They were communications in which Carol threatened to reveal their encounters if they did not continue. I told him I believed him, although I didn't really feel it. The messages showed his desire to end the relationship with Carol, but did not explain how it began. Even so, with tears in his eyes, he said that I would be the only one to believe him. I questioned why he hadn't consulted us from the start, but he replied that he had made the mistake of trusting Carol, who was an expert at manipulating people. He declared that he no longer cared about other people's opinions, only ours. However, I warned him that my personal belief differed significantly from the possibility that my mother would accept his statements. Finally, although I was glad that Carol was no longer in my life, my mother could only forgive him if he reliably proved the initial blackmail. And the only convincing way for her would be to file a complaint and lawsuit against Carol. My strategy is basic, nothing elaborate. If Lucas's claims are true, then my future ex-wife will face legal consequences. I believe that if she really possesses the characteristics described by Lucas, she deserves to be punished. I still have my doubts. I don't consider Lucas innocent, as he participated in the infidelity, but it is strange that someone would change so radically after years of a relationship. I suspect that Lucas is lying to clean up his image, and if that is true, he should also face consequences. However, I prefer not to get directly involved, allowing Lucas to act for me. If his statements are false, he will have filed an unjustified complaint and an unfounded lawsuit, possibly facing repercussions. He is relying on my help to obtain maternal forgiveness, but I am absolutely convinced that my mother does not wish to forgive him. And I am even more certain that whoever slept with my wife, regardless of the reason, does not deserve my support. I recognize a certain resentment, but that's what two close people betraying you like that can cause. I doubt Lucas will proceed, although he seemed enthusiastic about the possibility of maternal forgiveness. If it doesn't happen, I'll come back when both divorces are final to conclude my story. But I hope that closure includes some justice for my mother and for me. Update 5. I must make a clarification. I will comment on my divorce, not because my plan failed, but to inform you about its development before addressing what you are really interested in, as evidenced by your comments. My mother has completed her divorce from Lucas. I had to put slight pressure on him to sign the documents as he planned to continue fighting. I warned him that persisting would only further deteriorate his relationship with my mother, and that even if the whole truth came out later, it would be too late. His best option was to concede to what my mother wanted and try to win her back later. He tried to explain to her what he had told me, but she simply replied that it was irrelevant due to lack of evidence. My divorce was less complicated, as Carol showed little interest in our marriage, having moved on with her life and a new job, so she signed without resistance. But if she was expecting peace of mind, she was greatly mistaken. During the divorce proceedings, Lucas not only filed a police report for blackmail, but also a lawsuit. When this information reached Carol's company, she was forced to resign. At that point, the divorce became more important to her, as her new life was collapsing, but she finally signed, simply because she was caught up in those other conflicts. As she suspected, Lucas's accusation was false. There was never any blackmail of Carol forcing him into intimacy. It just happened, and we will never know the truth about how their relationship began, something irrelevant today. The only demonstrable blackmail, although unimportant to the authorities, was that Carol wanted to continue the relationship while he wanted to end it. He thought that by separating, no one would be hurt if they kept it secret. But Carol threatened to reveal their relationship. Does this constitute blackmail? Yes, but neither would it be the first mistress threatening to reveal everything to her lover's wife. There wasn't even any evidence about the alleged photographs that Carol possessed. We will never know if they really existed. That is why there were consequences for both of them. Firstly, Lucas was sentenced to 300 hours of community service for false accusation, as well as a fine of over $6,500. At the same time, Carol countersued him for false accusation and lawsuit, obtaining approximately another $7,500. Although Lucas's false accusation did not prosper significantly, due to a lack of concrete evidence, it produced an unexpected effect. Carol was also sentenced to more than 350 hours of community service. Simultaneously, Lucas obtained more than $11,000 in compensation for Carol's blackmail over the marital revelation. Months of legal proceedings passed, but finally both received various sanctions, in addition to having to complete all those community service hours. There are so many that 2 months after they started, there are still many left to complete. And no, my mother did not forgive Lucas. She only expressed satisfaction that he had signed the divorce papers. Lucas thought that denouncing and accusing without evidence would be enough to obtain maternal forgiveness, as he took serious measures against Carol, but he did not anticipate her defense. And honestly, neither did I. But in the end, no one emerged victorious in this legal battle. Well, maybe the lawyers, who I should have charged a commission to. They had surely never gotten money so easily,